Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of GameCamp webinar. Welcome to today's edition that will be focused on effective user acquisition, like looking at that from a few different angles. And let's actually meet our amazing speakers today. So let's invite to the stage our first speaker, Sylwia Haluska, who is Product Marketing Manager at Pixel Federation.
Hello guys. Really happy to be here.
Hello. Then let's invite the Julius Vencel, who is CMO at Powerplay Studio.
Hello, pleasure to be here as well.
Hello, Julius. And then let's invite Jan Wokryzek, who is working with gaming in Slovakia and Czech Republic. Hello, Jan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Mariusz. Really looking forward to hearing the stories from Sylwia and Julius.
Yes, it will be a really amazing session. And let's in this case, as always, of course, we are encouraging everyone to add the question on Slido, because it's really unique opportunity to ask real experts around the topics related to the session. So I really encourage you, once you have the questions, please add to the Slido, especially that at Slido you have opportunity to vote on those questions. So just go to the Slido and then just enter GameCamp as the nick of the event, and then you can ask your questions or vote on the questions of other people. Really encouraging you because again, it's good opportunity to ask experts around the topic. And without actually further discussion, we can really go to the first session. So Julius, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mariusz. So, hey everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Julius, and I'm CMO of Powerplay Studio, one of the largest Slovak studios in the game industry, and it's also #1 indie studio in Slovakia. So today, I would like to talk about global launching a game, specifically from a UA perspective, point of view, if you will. I will try to answer questions like, when is the app ready for paid UA? What channels to use for paid UA when global launching? What metrics are most important that we're looking at? What are the main KPIs? When are you going to shave already, as I haven't shaved this year, as you might have noticed? Or how and when to scale the user acquisition after global launch, and of course many more. And then the one question was a test, of course, if you're paying attention already. So everything I will present is not a straightforward and 100% guaranteed guide for success. This is one of those topics that you can't really say you have to go down this road because every other road is just not working. No. There is probably no right or wrong approach, only ones that are less and more effective depending on your situation, business model, and many other factors. So this is just our approach, what we did, and what works for us. Everything will be based on real numbers and data when we were global launching our latest game, Athletics Mania, in July 2020. Now, before I jump into it, a bit about us. The company was founded in 2007, so we are in the industry for more than 14 years. We are from Slovakia and our HQ is in Bratislava. We are an indie studio, which means we have no investors whatsoever. And we have approximately, give or take, 70 people, and everything is done in-house by ourselves, as we are trying to limit third-party involvement as much as possible. We are focusing on niche market, and that's why all of our games are in sports category so far. We have more than 20 million users from all over the world, across 16 games at the moment. As you can see, we are able to grow year over year in terms of revenue, making almost 5 million in 2020, and almost half of the revenue came from the new release game Athletics Mania. First of all, what is Athletics Mania? It's an action sports game and unique athletics simulator with RPG and manager elements. There are more than 10 disciplines available to play, and more disciplines are coming out as part of the live ops for the total of 12 disciplines to choose from. And the game looks something like this. And I'm sorry for the audio, probably gonna be loud, but it's just a few seconds, I promise. Yeah, so that's the actual gameplay of the game. So yeah, The game looks like that, and also it's a freemium game with IAPs and IaaS monetization methods that is available worldwide. Even though there are rewarding videos and interstitial ads, the game is leaning heavily towards IAPs. Roughly around 80 to 90% of the revenue is coming from in-app purchases. It's also a multi-platform game, so players are able to play not only on mobile, but in browser, Facebook, canvas. And even though the game is not native, we are trying to optimize it towards mobile devices as much as possible, because the majority of the traffic is from mobile devices. So you can see that less than 2% of the players are from web platform, Android making around 73%, and iOS almost 25%. And the game is trying to capture a feeling of a real sport. And therefore, we have partnerships with real professional athletes that are characters in the game. And the plan is to collaborate with athletics federations and host esports athletic events in the game as well. Now, why the soft launch? And what is soft launch actually? So it's a controlled release of your app or game in a test market outside your primary market. So it's a crucial step before launching your mobile game. And why are you doing it? Because before launching your game on the market, it's necessary to test it from a number of aspects. This is the main goal of a soft launch. It gives the possibility to test on a small part of its potential audience the different components of the game that you want to confirm, either user experience, monetization, retention, or whatever. It's essential to reserve for the bigger audience an advanced version of the game in order to maximize its income and sustainability. Soft launch aims to have a maximum of insights with limited cost without losing its audience. And for free-to-play games, and especially for those with in-app purchases, like us, for example, it's important to determine how well the game will do globally. And this will tell you if your game will be profitable and you should aim for global launch or simply kill it. It's also important if you plan on looking for a publisher for your game, for example. You should be aware that many publishers will look for some soft launch data before committing to any sort of monetary guarantee. Therefore, doing your own soft launch is highly recommended, as it will put you in a much better position during negotiations. And of course, last but not least, you want to check things on the UA side as well, like verify your market research, target audience, start testing creatives, check ASO conversions, and many more. Most of the developers, and we are no exception, are preferring soft launching on Android, as it has more benefits like better native ASO tools, faster update cycles, better market share in most countries, and usually is a lot cheaper compared to iOS. So usually the soft launching process is multiple stages or phases depending on the objective, but these three stages, technical, retention, and monetization, are by far the most used for heavy IAP games. Technical stage, the focus here is usually on tier 3 countries like India or Philippines because of their low user acquisition cost. As we are working mostly with European countries, our choice for these tests is Romania, for example. The goal is to test your app's stability, identify major bugs or any other issues so they can be fixed before moving on. In retention stage, the focus is on tier 2 countries. Brazil, for example, is used a lot, but again, we are focusing on European countries and countries like Slovakia, Poland, Croatia as an example. The objective is to make sure that the product funnels are well exercised so that people are moving smoothly through the onboarding and sign-up process and engaging with the game as expected. The last stage prior to global launch is usually the monetization stage, where you start mixing the tier 1 countries as well. This includes wealthier countries with higher purchasing power like US, UK, Australia, and Germany, but it all depends on your target audience. The goal here is to check the profitability according to UA, the conversion to paying customers, figure out your average revenue per user, implement your growth model, and even start testing different marketing channels. However, there are loads of articles, presentations, webinars, or guides for soft launching, so I don't want to dig any deeper into this topic and go over details. It all depends. Where to soft launch, which countries, what budgets to use, like what are the objectives. It all depends from one app to another and should be done in market research prior to even developing the game. This is just what is considered to be the ideal and most used scenario. The world is far from ideal, however, so of course we did it completely different and for various reasons. First thing we did was actually according to the best practices, and it was a technical soft launch where the focus was on Android and Romania as a geo, as I mentioned previously. There were multiple technical tests, but the very first one was done as soon as we had our first beta version of 3 disciplines. That was 100-meter sprint, javelin, and long jump. We made a separate application on Google Play called Athletics 2020 and started testing in closed beta. In the app were just these 3 disciplines and as a mini game, and that was it. Nothing else. No rankings, no tuned graphics, no metagame, no reason to play for more than a few minutes actually, and certainly no monetization whatsoever. Later on, in the second technical soft launch, we added an iOS platform and upgraded the graphics slightly. But why? Why did we do it? We did get some data, like retention, for example, but since there is no reason to play, it's just a mini game without any other mechanics whatsoever, what is the point looking at this data now? The only thing that came up was that the iOS users tend to stick more, and later discovered this because of better devices, Android wasn't optimized everywhere at this point, etc., etc. Then you have data like the ratio of different disciplines that are being played, for example. Looks like long jump is the least popular for some reason. Okay, that's interesting. But what now? Scratch long jump from the game? No. So let's take a look at something else, like how many games are they playing? Looks like there are users that are willing to play a lot of games in a row, even if there is absolutely no point doing it. And what about CPI? This could be a deal breaker, for example, if you expect a really low CPIs in tier 3 countries in sports category as you are used to, and find out you are wrong. Fortunately, this did not happen and the CPIs were really low. But of course, it all depends on creatives, target audience, what channel and optimization method is used, etc. This was a Facebook mobile app install campaign with interest as a targeting method. But it is something that you can already decide, like, hey, it's going amazingly well, let's just release it. Probably not. But it's good that people are actually playing and we are able to acquire users cheaply. That's a great sign. But I call these secondary KPIs or metrics. These are all good to know data, but nothing from these were the main purpose of the technical test. The main purpose of these technical soft launches, as the name suggests, was a technical one. Our goal was to test how different devices handle the game. So except the user behavior and time spent, the primary KPIs here were things like app stability, FPS, loading time, and major bugs. FPS is an example on the picture. The upper one is from the first tech launch, the other one is from the second tech launch. Even though in the second tech launch was the graphics slightly upgraded, the majority of the users were around 60 FPS. Other thing was the loading time, for example, that needed to be optimized, to be honest. All in all, the game was loaded within 10 seconds to 90% of the players. So some extremes on the left, but this usually happens when users minimize the app and for some reason, for example, when they're calling someone and they return later on. We are buying traffic even based on devices as well. For example, devices with Android 8 and higher and devices with lower than Android 8 to see what are the minimum requirements for the game to identify which devices are the ones that can handle the game so they can be excluded. And if I'm not wrong, I believe we excluded all devices with less than 1 gigabyte of RAM. So the second stage for us was already slightly off from the best practices and most used scenario, because instead of just focusing on retention phase, we made our all-in-one hybrid stage consisting of technical, retention, and interstitial ads. So we finally added the whole metagame and all the mechanics that will be in the game upon the release and started testing. We are still buying traffic from Facebook with mobile app install campaigns with interest, mostly Romania for the interstitial test, but started slowly mixing better European countries like Slovakia, Poland, Spain, or even Italy. The objective and KPIs to observe in this stage were to check how are we retaining users, what is the user behavior, churn rate, onboarding process, if the users are moving through the funnels properly, what is the time per session, and what are the sessions per user, what are the CPIs and IPMs on UA side, or what are the eCPMs and fill rate on ad monetization side, while still fixing major bugs, issues, and optimizing technical infrastructure. However, our games, as I mentioned, are heavy IAP games, and still no major tier 1 go-to-markets were tested for the IAP monetization side at this point. So guess what happened next? That's right, global launch happened. What the hell, right? After all I just said about the ideal scenario. So we completely skipped the most important part before going global, And we had no idea if the game would be profitable or not. Now comes the great question, why? Well, we did for various reasons. First of all, the game is pretty much a clone from our older games. Athletics Mania is designed based on the Skija Mania 3. There are some upgrades and improvement, of course, but still pretty much a clone as parts of the codes are the same. And because of that, some slight iterations are possible, but no major changes to the concept are doable. So even if the game won't be profitable, it's probably best idea to just let it go and try to design something else from the scratch than try to redesign this to something else. And the meta concept was already proven as it's a clone and did not change much, so no point in testing it heavily either. The biggest reason why we just went with the global was the seasonality and time pressure. Our games are heavily dependent on seasonality. Like, you can't do much with winter games in summer and vice versa. As all the metrics are suffering, and it's not worth it to push UA outside the season. So we knew that Athletics Mania is a summer game, and we have only a few work-heavy UA months before the winter season, and we wanted to ride the Olympic wave as well. That's why we had to release in July already, but unfortunately, Olympic didn't happen. And now comes the part why probably most of you are here. We just went global, and the company has some expectations from the UA team, and they pretty much look like this. Start buying people and be profitable. And by the way, like, we don't want to add any pressure, but you have to know how serious it is. The project will either be a success, and perhaps we could all keep our jobs, or the project will not be profitable. And then, unfortunately, there is nothing that is going to generate major revenue for the company. So maybe it's time to let some people go. Like, I'm sorry, what? So, boys and girls, what do you do? Well, before you do anything, let's talk about metrics and KPIs. There are a lot of metrics. So which ones are worth looking at from UA perspective? Because you are about to make decisions that will either make or burn money for the company. And you definitely don't want to burn company money, as it will probably mean some people will lose their job. So let's decide. But based on what? Is it CPI, APM, retention, LTV, conversion to paying users, average revenue per user, daily active users, click-through rates, some game-specific in-game metrics, and in-game event completion? Anything else? Let's talk about DAU, short for daily active users. So is the total number of people who open and engage with your game. Your DAU number can reveal many things. It can measure the growth rate of a product, it can reveal trends, and even indicate user behavior, like on Athletics Mania example. The first decline is an indication of downscaling the UA because of the winter season. In February, we started experimenting and slowly scaling the UA a bit to see what's the response of the audience. And the spike is the Google Play feature from last week. But does it tell you how much money you are making? No. So it's easy to fall into the trap of chasing DAU goal for the wrong reasons. A DAU can become a vanity number, and many companies like to share impressive DAU data that may have no actual bearing on the success of the business. If DAU was our KPI and objective, I could easily buy lots of tier 3 countries like India and mission completed. However, I probably wasted money doing so and made none. So CPI and IPM. Of course, every developer's dream is to acquire users cheaply. The less, the better. However, similar to DAU, chasing this number can be deadly. It can be altered with creatives, for example. It's dependent on CPM, click-through rates, target audience, optimization method, etc. As for the IPM, installs per mile is simply the number of times your app or game is installed per 1,000 ad impressions. IPM can be impacted by a multitude of variables as well, including creatives, targeting strategy, supply source, and app store optimization. Strong IPM can impact the waterfall ad bidding process, improving the rank of your ad campaign, and this will get you more traffic and impressions, though increasing the number of installs. So it's a great way to understand how your user acquisition strategies are performing and whether or not they can scale for a specific game and at what price point. So basically, it represents your buying power. However, take a look at the data from last week. One of many campaigns that are active for Athletics Mania at the moment. Obviously, the marketing channel here is Facebook. These two campaigns are both on Android, have the same creatives, and are running in the same region, being the US, Canada, and Australia. The first one is a mobile app install type of campaign, or MAI for short, with interests, while the second one is an AEO, or even optimization type of campaign, optimizing towards the purchase event. The MAI's campaign's average CPI is around 13 cents, which is more than 10 times less compared to the AEO CPI, being around €1.60. And the MAI's IPM and click-through rates are off the chart compared to the AEO again, meaning the first audience likes the ad way more than the second audience of the AEO. This must be a better campaign, right? I mean, come on, buying US, Canada, and Australia traffic for 13 cents, like what are you even waiting for? It's time to scale these, increase the budgets already, right? And no. If you want to be profitable, there's Jan showing up.
Julius, thank you so much for the presentation so far. I think some really great insights for me, and I'm also sure that for the audience. If I can just ask a couple of questions. Sure. The first one is, what would be your payback window that you are working with in the company? So basically, like the ROAS, when does the ROAS turn into profit, and how many days are you okay with in terms of exposure?
Yeah. Well, it kind of depends on platform, like what type of campaign and channel is used, etc. But obviously, the sooner it is, the better. And well, for a few months after a global launch is usually within a few months. But for some major games that are running for a couple of years already, it's still okay for us to be profitable somewhere within a year or so.
And are you able to project that at the time of the acquisition of the user, 365 days out?
Well, we are not working currently with some LTV predictions, but we can confidently say after a few weeks that what was the ROAS going to be like.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for the answer. And then one more question, which is a favorite question of all working in the gaming industry, and that's around iOS 14. And how are you preparing, or if you are doing and taking any steps at this moment to prepare for the launch?
Yeah, I knew it's going to be us sooner or later. Well, there's still a lot of uncertainty, right? But yeah, we are already implemented the ATT prompt, for example, and the plan is to A/B test a few of the designs of the prompt to see which one brings the best opt-in rates. Another thing is updating all the SDKs. We already reverted from TROAS to TCPA on Google, for example, on the iOS platform. And we are working, for example, on custom events that should be working within the shorter conversion window, etc. But the biggest concern for us at the moment is probably how to handle the conversion value. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, when the privacy changes will be live, I guess we are able to face all the problems one by one and see how it goes.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the worst is the waiting, because nobody knows what the actual impact is going to be on the business of every single company. So we just have to wait and see, and then adapt very quickly to the changes. And maybe one last question before I let you continue. And this one is from the audience. Which metrics to use, and how to know when the game is ready for UA scaling? What kind of metrics do you look at before you press the button and you say, okay, let's go 1000x for buying users?
Yeah, it's not really a easy answer, easy question to answer, but some answers are in the presentation, so I don't want to spoil the future, so.
Perfect. I think we can continue. Thanks a lot for the answers, and let's go for the second half of your preso.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. So back to the presentation. So if you want to be profitable, there is the good old equation that acquisition costs will need to be lower than their lifetime value. You need to make more money than you are spending acquiring the user. The CPI is telling you only the one part of the equation, however, and that is what is the cost of the traffic that is getting in, but nothing about what is the quality of the traffic. And that is the problem. If you take a look at the same picture again, usually the downside of trying to lower the CPI as much as possible means lowering the lifetime value as well, because you are not willing to go for the higher CPMs, which depending on targeting, but usually are the more quality users. So even though the CPM and CPI is much higher, this is the campaign where the purchases are happening. What is happening if you bring the other metrics into the context? So these are the first 10 days of the same two campaigns from different perspectives than just CPI. If you take a look at the retention, day 1, day 3, and day 7, you can clearly see the difference. Like the May campaign's ROAS curve will probably never reach 100%, because there are no IAPs, that is the blue curve. The only revenue that was generated was from ads, which is the red curve. And this red curve will flatten sooner or later. On the other hand, the AEO's campaign ROAS curve is increasing daily, even though running at 10 times scale and the CPI being 10 times more costly. We already know that this will be profitable. This will probably reach ROAS somewhere within 3 or 4 months. So yes, the May campaign is bringing in cheap traffic, but the AEO is where the users are playing and paying. If you look at more major campaigns, let's say not just 10 days, but 100 days from the past, even from a different game, as this is Ski Jump Mania 3, like UA done this winter in December 2020, and we can see a lot of similarities. Like first one, again, a Facebook mobile app and sell campaign, but as a lookalike from the purchasing audience. The second one, Facebook AEO, optimizing towards the purchase event. Both done at the same time, same creatives, same region, being DACH region, Germany, Austria, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. There's the day 1, day 3, day 7, day 15. The last one is the day 30 retention. And since the day 7, the AEO's retention is almost doubling the May. ROAS curve of the May, not even halfway there, but it's flattening already. So even when acquiring users cheaply at 24 cents, it has problems to reach ROAS with just 1K invested. On the other hand, the AEO is still going steadily at much larger scale. So we'll soon reach ROAS with 20K investment, while the CPI was again almost 10 times more than €2. So the CPI itself is only a number. It only becomes important when you are able to compare it to a customer lifetime value, or the amount of revenue one customer brings in over the lifetime of the relationship with the game. So you can't decide purely based on CPI. What about retention then? Retention rates measures the proportion of users you've retained over a specific time period. So it's a metric that's indicative of your user's affinity to the product. And it's important because it helps to understand how well your app is performing over time. It will give you an indicator of the game's potential. Therefore, your retention rate should be a key focus. Retention largely defines the degree of game's success or failure. You can have the best acquisition and monetization in the market. If the retention is too low, the game will flop. This is all true, but I would like to change this statement because applying this logic, we would probably never even release some of our games, like Ski Jump Mania 3 is an example on the picture. Retention largely defines the degree of the game's success or failure. True, you can have the best acquisition and monetization in the market. If the retention is too low, the game will flop. True, but I would like to add that it's the same vice versa. You can have the best acquisition and retention in the market, but if the monetization sucks, even day 30, 100% won't help you. Therefore, again, you cannot decide purely based on retention. And let me demonstrate. I think we can all agree that the day 1, day 3, and day 7 are the most important retention rates to look at, while soft launching or global launching, because you can't simply wait months for day 30 or day 90 to happen. So here you have the day 1, day 3, and day 7 retention rates of 2 different UA campaigns for our 2 different winter games, one being Ski Legends and the other one Ski Jump Mania 3. Both campaigns happened in 2019. Again, Ski Legends, day 1 close to 30%, almost triple the amount of Ski Jump, while the acquisition is even super cheap. Amazing, why are you even doing UA with day 1 11% and CPI added, right? That high, right? Well, because of this. Again, blue line is the ROAS, orange flat line indicates 100%, when they cross, profit. And the green line, by the way, is the number of active players on that day, and the red curve is secondary income, meaning when someone is paying in one of other games. So despite the day 1 30%, Ski Legend is at 36% ROAS after 480 days, and will probably never reach 100%. While Ski Jump is at 204% with 37K invested, and day 1 being 11%. So what does it all mean? For me, they're all secondary metrics and KPIs. Focusing purely or too much on these metrics isn't very good either. Like, I see it this way. They are very important, no doubt about that. But none of these standing alone will tell you something like, oh shit, like this metric is way above my benchmarks. Let's just increase the budget because it's going amazingly well. Well, then what is the main decision driving metric to look at if the company's goal is profitability then? I would say that the main KPI is and should be the ROAS curve. As long as you are reaching ROAS within desirable time period for cash flow of the company, then go for it. Retention, CPI, IPM, conversion to paying customers, and all the other secondary factors are just helping me to decide. But they are all connected. I like to compare it to a car. If you want to get from point A to point B, you need the car to get you there, and that is the ROAS curve itself. What kind of car? That's when all the other metrics come in and are affecting the ROAS curve, meaning are affecting how fast you'll get there, the road to take, how luxurious it's going to be, etc. Retention, for example, could be the fuel here. You need the fuel in order to drive. The more fuel you have, the longer you can stay on the road. Like, are we moving slowly? Let's upgrade the engine and boost the monetization, ARPU, or conversion to payers. But the fuel itself will get you nowhere. And same goes with the engine, wheels, suspension, or etc. So all these metrics, they are all connected, and I can't decide purely based on all these secondary factors. I have to decide based on what kind of car we have as a whole picture, and that is the ROAS curve. So the main question for me is, am I able to move from point A to point B successfully? If so, then I don't care what kind of engine or wheels the car has. Same goes for the UA. If I'm able to reach ROAS and make the UA profitable within the desirable time periods of the company, then I'll do it even if the retention, CPI, or any other metric can be underperforming. It's not like, hey, this game has day one 11%, I'm not going to bother with UA. But what if, despite that, it could have ROAS 200% within a few months? Wouldn't you do it anyway? Because as long as you are still making more money than you are spending, the business is growing. Now, when that's settled, back to our global launch situation. Like, a lot of pressure on us. We just went global, and the game has to be a success, or else it's a very bad news for the company. But we have no idea how the game will be performing. The only thing we know are the data from all-in-one hybrid phase. Means, for example, that the retention from tier 3/tier 2 countries still in closed beta looks something like this. There are some in-game specific metrics like percentage of users that are active, percentage of users that reach level 5, level 12, and so on. But are these good numbers? I don't know. There are no LTV predictions. There are no historical data to rely on and benchmark. It's a new game. And the fact that the monetization-wise, the game wasn't not really tested. Like, so far, every metric tied to monetization was underperforming. Like, almost no one is paying, and we are certainly not reaching ROAS. One reason why it could be that the game was still in closed beta up until this point. So the users knew it's in beta, and it was clearly stated both in the app and on the store as well, that their progress might reset, etc. So all the metrics that are bound to the monetization side, like ARPU, ROAS, conversion to paying user, etc., are suffering at this time. This is something that we hope is going to improve as soon as we are live and global. But the global launch was pretty much a semi-monetization soft launch while going live and global, because we had to iterate the product on the go. But where do you start as a UA team? Like, the company expects us to start spending money as soon as possible, so the game can start generating money. But on the other hand, like, I didn't want to test it on our primary go-to markets and invest our best and high LTV users on an unfinished product. I think this is very important. So we picked 6 geo: Germany, Poland, UK, US, Spain, and Italy, so we won't waste other markets. And of course, we started slow and low scale on both Android and iOS, and both Facebook with mobile app install type of campaigns with interest, and Google with install volume campaigns with broad targeting to see what happens. And why May and install volume? Well, first of all, there is no data for the event optimization yet, so we need to feed the system with data, and best to do it cheaply. And another reason is that as long as we are able to still reach ROAS even this broadly, it's better to acquire the same user for a few cents rather than for a few euros later on with even optimization as the market gets saturated and we have to hunt for the higher LTV users. And we are calling this first official Facebook and Google campaigns challenger campaigns, as we have this habit in our company, like when global launching, like the first campaigns are referring to a space exploration mission, like we had Voyager, for example, or Pioneer for some of our older games in the past. So Challenger was chosen for the Athletics Mania. So this was the Facebook Make on Android platform. You can see that it was super cheap. And with just 3 cents on average, we had 38K installs with just 1K invested. The conversion to paying users was a bit low, even below 1%, but the retention and monetization was okay-ish. And if you take a look at the CPI and the day 30 LTV, they are really close. So in theory, you should reach break-even ROAS after a month or so. And that's exactly what happened. Actually, it happened even early on the 23rd day. As a stated, LTV is just from IAP, and there are, of course, ads as well, which is the purple line. So ROAS is at the moment at 757% after 270 days. Similar story was on iOS. The early retention of iOS users is higher, but the longer one since around day 30 is actually shifts in favor of Android. Here the CPI was a bit more expensive, but still only 7 cents. But the conversion to paying user was higher as well, at around 1, and so was the LTV. So all in all, it took only 24 days as well to start being profitable. And you can see that even after 270 days, there are still pairs that are being active. That is the green curve. However, we didn't know this back then. It's easy to look at this mature data and see it's performing, but we were cautious for the first couple of weeks. We could see only fractions of this data as the day 1, day 3, and day 7 were just coming up, and the ROAS curve was rising on a daily basis slowly. And we were worried, like, what will the long-term retention look like? Well, we don't know. It might flatten the ROAS curve if there is no one left to play and pay later on, because it happened with some of our older games. So we need more data and more time. Like, that was our answer for first couple of weeks. But every week we are more and more confident that it can actually be a success, and we can start mixing different geos and increasing budgets. Before I talk about scaling, I want to mention one of few possible pitfalls to avoid. It has something to do with the game lifecycle. This picture was actually taken from one of Eric Seufert's presentations, so shout out to him. Go check out mobile.that memo. And I recommend subscribing to the newsletter as well. It's a great source of knowledge. So there are 3 stages of the mobile marketing lifecycle. It's a honeymoon stage, growth stage, and strategy stage. The honeymoon phase happens upon the release of the game. Early adopters are flooding the game. Everyone is seeing the ad for the first time. Everything is super cheap, like click-throughs are off the chart. And that's why something like this is possible. And please do not think this will last, because it won't. And your product team needs to know this as well. There has to be clear communication and realistic expectation. Otherwise, they might think the product is a major success and it's all like sunshine and rainbow. And suddenly it isn't. So the product, is the product ready to still be profitable, like when the market gets a bit saturated and you need to enter the growth stage? Like when, for example, the metrics stabilize and instead of 9% click-through rates, you'll be below 1%. When instead of 3 cents CPI, you'll be acquiring users for 3 euros. So instead of 40,000 users in the campaign, there will be only 4,000. That means less people are generating revenue, LTV of the campaign is lower, and payback windows extending by a lot. So this will get worse, a lot worse, and that is the fact, and prepare for it. If your product struggles with monetization and can't even reach ROAS in these early stages, like, I suggest you work more closely with the product team and think about iterating the product first before scaling and waiting for some magic to happen. So back to the UA. We started scaling, increasing budget, mixing more geos, not only US and most European countries, but from Australia to Africa or Latin America as well. And so we really went global and worldwide. Still working mostly with Google install volume and Facebook May campaigns. For example, what happens when we scaled a bit and the investment was 37K? The average CPI jumped to 16 cents, but still decently low. And even the average conversion to paying users was higher as well. These numbers are all as an average of mixed countries, but every geo had its own separate campaign. And of course, we were scaling the ones that were performing the most in terms of ROAS curve. These were usually the ones that had higher retention than average, better in-game specific metrics, better conversion to paying users, etc. Like it was performing the best in most European countries like France, UK, Germany, Nordic countries or CE region, and of course US or Canada. But we did find some hidden gems like South Africa, for example. We confirmed that the target audience was according to the market research, and the game was performing mostly in countries where athletics is popular as a sport. So keep in mind that the more money you want to spend, the more costly it will probably get. So it's about finding the sweet spot where you can invest as much as possible while still being effective and profitable. As you can see, even with more money invested and acquiring users pretty much broadly, like the ROAS happened on the 77th day. So it took a bit longer, but it's natural when scaling. Didn't have any problems being profitable, and we could reach ROAS in a short period of time. Another thing to notice is how well the game is retaining the valuable players. Even with the day 182 retention being just 0.55%, those are the players that matter, as the green line, which is the number of active players, is not declining much, and the ROAS curve is still growing after 253 days. So you have to know your product as a UA manager as well. Do we need to monetize early in a short period of time, or are we retaining high LTV users for a longer time period? This will affect the ROAS curve, so you need to know what to expect in order to make good decisions. So we were relying on Facebook May and Google Insta volume for around 1 to 2 months. First ship from the broad Insta volume was on Google platform, as it was less and less effective. The ROAS was getting longer and longer as the honeymoon phase was coming to an end, and we couldn't reach ROAS on a larger scale while going this broad, unless it would mean extending, would mean extending dramatically the payback window, which is not good for the cash flow of the company. So we stopped eventually after approximately 1.5 months and switched towards these CPA campaigns and for the purchase event optimization. We also changed the setup of the campaigns as we started grouping more similar countries together, like Nordic region, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, or DACH region, Austria, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Germany, or CE region like Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, etc., etc., instead of focusing on one geo per campaign. So the hunt for the more costly but higher LTV users has begun, and it will look like this. First thing you might notice, except the increase of CPI, is that the conversion to paying users is much higher. And then it's this. We had the 57K invested back after around 100 days, and now it's more than double. The same thing, but next month. We invested even more, 91,000. So yes, you might notice that we did even less users with almost twice the amount spent because the CPI was higher again. But does it matter? Because thanks to the TCPA learnings for a couple of weeks, now the retention is even higher, both short-term and long-term, and the conversion to paying users is higher as well. So what matters is this. When do you get your 91K back? Not what is the CPI. So thanks to the event optimization working mostly with Google, you are back in business and could scale the UA efforts even more. Same thing happened on the Facebook platform, and we were shifting from May to optimization methods like AEOs and VOs, while still running May on a low scale, but as a support and to feed the system with data so the VO won't die on its own. In 5 months since the launch in July till like November, we spent 1.4 million euros into the UA. We were confident that we have a good product in our hands. And instead of just over pushing the Facebook and Google duopoly, maybe it's time to start exploring different marketing channels. So we started testing TikTok and Snapchat, but unfortunately, the timing was a bit off as the winter season already hit us. Everything started underperforming, including Facebook AEOs and VOs or Google TCPA. We were trying to experiment with different custom events, working mostly with engagement metrics, but it was clear that we had to downscale everything as winter is already here. And this time, however, we are approved for Google's ROAS, and that is still in beta, I believe. And thank God, because this was the only thing that was able to prove profitable even outside the season. You can see the impact of the winter season on the retention numbers for the same ROAS campaign that has been live since December and is still actually live at the moment while being scaled again as the spring is coming. You can see that since December to February, the retention is actually getting higher. It feels like it's getting warmer and warmer, right, as the spring is coming. But again, those standing alone are just numbers. What matters is that we will be profitable, even in winter, like despite lower retention rates, lower conversion to paying users, higher CPIs, etc. So Google ROAS was the only traffic source that could do that in December. And even in January, like obviously it didn't reach ROAS yet, but it will get there. It's still only 61 days from the start of the campaign. It's 43%, while rising steadily on a daily basis. And as of today, it's still live, and for the few days of March, it already looks like this. So fresh data and the ROAS percentage higher than the number of days of the campaign is always a good thing. Like therefore, we have high hopes for the ROAS as we are starting to scale back again as the spring is coming, and it's probably one of our best UA channels. And we are also starting exploring other marketing channels, Snapchat, and we're testing even Apple search ads at the moment. What's in it for you? Like, know your product. Know what is specific for the product. What metrics are important as they are affecting the ROAS curve. And look at ROAS and how are you getting your money back instead of focusing on single metric. Like that metric standing alone is just a number. And if it does not affect the ROAS curve, then it doesn't matter that much. And hopefully, you'll remember at least these two main takeaways from the presentation. If so, then I guess my job here is done. And thank you for your attention. That's it.
Thank you, Julius, for great presentation. Maybe before we go to the next presentation, I will just ask you one more question. Like, once you are creating the campaigns, are you more focusing on single country campaigns, or like you are more grouping the countries? What is your approach towards that?
Yeah. Like as I mentioned in the presentation, we are starting like single geo per campaign to just test the geos, but now we're moved towards the more regional setup. Like we're grouping more countries into together, and it has some benefits for us. Like for example, like we can run UA in smaller countries as well, because if they're grouped in some countries, like running TCP/IP ROAS or AO or VO is just not possible. And for example, like the VO works great even when running worldwide with few local, regional AO and MAE support. So basically, it's extending the reach and all the audience. And another benefit is this: it's way easier for the UA management and the optimization of the campaigns. It saves time, and we don't have to change much also in the setup because of the SKA network limitation, for example, as there are fewer campaigns. The only disadvantage I see is probably localization of the ads, but I don't think it's that huge of an issue.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer, and please, of course, stay with us because at the end we'll have like much longer Q&A and discussion. And of course, everyone watching that webinar, I really encourage you to again join the Slido and add the questions for the next session, and of course for the end Q&A. But for now, let's invite our second speaker, Sylvia from Pixel Federation. Who will be actually talking about her experience in general with running the Google campaigns. Yeah, so in this case, user acquisition run with Google Ads. Yeah, what's the experience? What worked for her? What didn't? Sylvia, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Marius, and thank you for Julius for sharing such details about the global launching. I think it was pretty interesting, and you guys can just take a lot from it. So I'm pretty welcome you here today, and my mainly focus today will be around Google Ads and sharing you some notes, some tricks, tips, what I've learned and what I had for my previous experiences. So first of all, I'm Sylvie, and I'm a product marketing manager at Pixel Federation. I'm there more than 5 years, and I really love the gaming industry. Pixel Federation is we are making free-to-play games, and mainly we are focusing to simulation games and puzzle adventures. So just a brief introduction to know where I'm coming from, because I think it's really important. So let's start with my summary, what I will speak about today. So my main focus will be on the Google UAC side, because that's where I have the most experience, and I can share a lot of knowledge how we are doing at Pixel Federation, the user acquisition on the channel, how it really works, and I will share some tips and some suggestions, recommendations, which works for us the best and which from you can take a lot, I think. So let's start. So Google UAC, the first thing, universal ad campaigns. That's how it shows, and that's how it's written. It is a really powerful tool to promote your app. It's really easy to serve and manage, really straightforward. So if your main goal is to advertise and get more users to your app, game, or whatever, it is really a good place to start. My important note here, when I already started to speak or I speak with whoever about describing what are UAC campaigns about, everybody, the first question just come in is like, where it is shown. So where it is shown, just really quickly, really briefly, if you just meet with an advertisement on Google search, like text, that's a Google ad. If you are checking out a Google Display Network, if you're checking out your Gmail, or your apps, mobile websites, news sites, blogs, whatever, on the internet, it's probably it's a Google ad. Then on the next place is YouTube. I think that all of you guys are familiar with. And of course, Google Play, where you can just see in a section says you might also like, related to your app, suggested for you. So that are the spaces where you can just looking at the advertisement from Google Ads. And the really new space is a Discover on Google Search, which means that you can you will be able to serve their visually rich ads to your users. So it's something like in a Google search, but it's like in Discover. And the one pain point here that is just for Android phones and for just English speaking countries, but I think it will be sooner rolled out for everyone. So that's just a brief introduction of it, that how it really works and what is Google UAC about. So let's go here, how it really works. I will pinpoint the things what I think it's really important and which is like consist of, and you already need to think about it when you start your purely a new Google UAC campaign. About the country, about the audience, what you would like to target, about the budget, really wisely, about your bid, about the optimization or just optimization goal. And really, a most important part of it are the ad groups, which are consist of your creatives and your assets, which is really important. And when you mix it together, then to just let to the machine and to let him make the magic behind. So the machine learning behind will test different assets, combinations, serve ads in different like spaces. As I mentioned you before, trying to find the best performing ones and helping you to get the best value for each your registrations, installs, or download, or whatever your conversion is. Also, it automates the targeting and the bidding. So when you set up a budget bid and this like species here, then it just make a space for the algorithm and for the machine learning to find the valuable users for you. So that's, I think, the most important part of it. And as I would like to share with you how it really works and how we at Pixel Federation thinking about it and how we use these small pieces and putting together, then I'm coming to 2 countries. It's really funny because I was listening to Julius as well, how they are dividing the countries. It's pretty similar as we are doing right now. So I think it's really important to define who will be your audience and who you would like to target. And first of all, in Pixel Federation, for us, it's really important to target Tier 1 and Tier 2 countries because they are the highly valued players and users for us. So mainly when we are thinking about UAC campaigns, the Tier 1 countries had their dedicated campaign, of course, just the bigger ones. So we are making from the smaller countries clusters, and these clusters can be divided and grouped by their sizes, by their similarities, as Julius mentioned. For example, Nordic or Scandinavian countries, divided by languages, or what we are using the most are the cost per action, or the metric what we are using are cost per paying users. So we are looking at the data and checking like ranges where we can just play around with the bits, and it's super easier to find what kind of or what bit we should use when we are using, for example, countries with CPA goals around, like, I don't know, 50 and 60, then we know that we need to just move at this stage, and it's moving at this pace. When we make different clusters, then it's super easy after the first, I don't know, 2 weeks, or after the first 30 days, to look at not only the whole performance and to have the holistic view of the performance of your campaign, but going deeper and check out performance of the different countries, because then you can find out a lot of smaller but bigger countries which can outperform the other, and then you can make a dedicated campaign for them. Of course, it really depends how big is that country, or if you can group it with another one, so you can make it more profitable. But in the first stage, it's really good to have a bigger cluster around, I don't know, 10 countries, and then you can just pinpoint and just play around with that grouping. After the first iteration of the first round of the campaign you run, you will have a lot of information about the performance of these countries. And on the other side, there were the outperforming ones, and the countries which there are negatively affects the performance. Then we are mainly turning them off, and blacklisting also in some kind of way. But that's not a mandatory, and it's just the last step for us. For example, if we have a cluster for the camp, we have a campaign for the cluster, which is like the last couple of months not getting a good, or just the last month not getting really or not performing pretty well. We can see dropping revenues from there, a dropping amount of payers. Then, of course, first what we are doing after the small tweaks, if it doesn't help, is just turn off the countries which are really, really negatively affects the performance. So there are some suggestions how we are working with countries and clusters. Now the second portion which can be really interesting and really important. It's the optimization goal. There are a lot of possibilities when you are setting up a Google USC campaign. It can be your optimization goal. It can be install volume, in-app action, or in-app action value. Install volume, it's really good to have if you would like, or if you would like to gain a lot of downloads, registrations to your app. Mainly it is used, as Julius said before, for the global launches, or for maybe sometimes the soft launches when you would like to gain a lot of users and to test a lot of things in your new game. And of course, if you had a really good monetization and you not necessarily needed to focus on some kind of event and some kind of actions, that's totally worth it. And let's do install volume campaigns. But when you are setting up a campaign, it's really good to have in your mind that what is exactly the goal with that campaign. If you would like to just gain a lot of downloads, registration, no matter what kind of people the machine drives you in, then it's totally okay. But if you would like to, I don't know, to have more engaged players or to focus on some metrics, then it's needed to go deeper in the funnel and trying to use optimization goal in-app actions, where you can even not really necessarily put their in-app purchases, because it's like just the last step in the whole funnel. But you can really use, for example, tutorial completion, or some level ups, or whatever you can imagine and you can set up in your funnel, and then you can focus on more to the engaged users. But mainly in the companies, as we are really, really ROI driven. So for us, it's really important the quality of these users. So we are focusing more in-app purchases. Then they are generating for us pretty good results also, and so far. So we are really happy with that. And there is another option for the optimization goal is in-app action value, which are ROAS optimizations, which is more granular than TCPA. In TCPA campaigns, you set up a bid, or just a bid that you are aware of to pay for the user. And in TROAS, you can set up like a goal for that week. For example, you can set up D7, D3, or D40, or D30, or whatever goal for that, and you were aiming to generate these ROAS goals. Already we are now in a beta with that, so we are trying and testing them out, but I think it make more sense to gain our goals, like KPI goals overall. One really good best practice here is once you set up the campaign with some kind of optimization goal, please do not doing any other changes inside of it, because it can really machine learning will learn what kind of valuable users the machine should serve to you. And when you change something, it will can totally destroy the performance of your campaign. Of course, if you had set it up, for example, tutorial completion, and you are moving so far for the level achievement in your funnel, I think that will not harm as much your campaign, as you will change tutorial completion for purchase. That can be in a good way, but if you have a purchase set it up and then you change it to the lower, then it can really, really harm the performance. So I think it's really, really important to think, and before you set up the campaign, to know what is your goal with that and what you would like to reach. Then budget and bid, these two inseparable pairs who the whole performance depends on these two. Already everybody knew, I think, that the main goal is to generate in the beginning, really beginning of the campaign, more than 10 conversions per day. I put here an example that when you were thinking about and you are in a stage that you would like to set up your first UAC campaign, and you would like to just bring a lot of ROAS to home, or how to say that. Just imagine that your, for example, cost per paying user for the last, I don't know, 30, 60 days is $50 for a different cluster. And you had only just $200 to invest in daily. And if you think about it, how you can count that 50, when you put there the 10 times, then it's 500, not 200. So it won't really work. It will not showing and not serving you the best users, what you were, of course, aiming for when you set up a new campaign. But so then if you had your goal, like you set up your bid to the $50, you already need a minimum budget $500. But you need to think about it that it depends on the assets, what you have inside. It depends where it will sort. It depends where the machine or the algorithm will find your quality users. It can be higher, even if you set it that goal. So if you would like to generate these 10 conversions per day, you need to put there a higher budget. So for me, and what I was just experienced, that a really good like to start with the $1,000 for the first side. So I think that should be the amount where the first couple of weeks, it's like 7 or 40 days, when you are not touching the budget, it can just generate you and it will find you the best users, valuable users. What we are really lucky in Pixel Federation that we had the best analytics team, where they prepared us dashboards of a lot of graphs with spend, registration, revenues, payers, and CPI, which when you are checking on daily basis, maybe you can easily find out and catch the trends. And even after the first 7 days, you can really, really, really quickly find out when you need to make some changes in the campaign. So let's say you run your campaign with 1,000 budget per day, and it's not really spending. So and when you are going deeper to the campaign, you will see that oh yes, it's just sorting to YouTube, which is much higher and much expensive, and that's the reason that your campaign is just saving the money for the next days to just maybe overspend and to sort to that spaces. So you can really quickly react on it, and you can make just small tweaks on it, and it can really help to survive the campaign the first couple of weeks, and then it will just make the magic and generating you the KPI goals of what you've set it before. On the other hand, there is just the one thing, the iOS campaigns. Of course, we don't know yet how it will be after IDFA, because it's just a big mystery. But hopefully we will know really, really soon. So if you are making changes or any changes on iOS campaigns, you need to be more careful, because these campaigns are more sensitive for any kind of changes. So if you are making changes, do a smaller tweaks, maybe more often, but doing it like in a lower percentage, not like, I don't know, 10% increasing, because it's super relaunching the campaign, the algorithm there, and it just can harm your campaign anyway. I prepared here like an overview, a little bit of overview from our dashboard. It's just really graphs from spend, from payers, what I was mentioning you before. And you can definitely see the correlations between each metrics. If you are, for example, raising the budget, you can definitely see that it started to, for example, dropping for the first couple of days because it's relaunching the campaign. It's need to learn again what kind of people, what is the space the machine can moving in. And it is the same when you are changing the bid as well. But of course, when we are checking out these graphs and looking at the trends, if we can catch something, it's really important that there are some other factors which can impact on it, not only the budget and bids, maybe the space where it is sorting your assets. It can raising CPIs that can just destroy your performance for a while. Or it was a long time ago, then you change and switching the creatives or not filtering them out, or not, you are not feeding them with the new assets that can already impact. Or if you are just pulling out some country from your cluster, which had a really good performance before, then of course your campaign needs a week or 2 weeks to learn again how it will need to work with the small pieces which is added to that soup. And the other thing what I would like to mention that already, of course, we are aiming to have our TCPA goal around the real CPA. It's not necessarily as important to have it really close to each other. Sometimes the campaign can work even if it's TCPA much higher than the real CPA is. It can generate you the best performing campaign, so a lot of money. And on the other hand, sometimes it happens that the CPA is much lower than the CPA goal. No, not the CPA goal, but the real CPA. Then you don't need to be afraid, but to just make it a little bit increase and decrease to move that on, because that gap, it's not really worth it. Of course, there are some chances when it will work, but keep on eye on this kind of metrics as well. And the last part of it, which is, I think, really important, are ad groups. And when I say ad groups, I mean mainly creatives, because it is like inside of the ad groups. I think that's the most important part of the whole UAC campaigns. Because you need to feed somehow, even if you had your budget, bid, countries chosen, and optimization goal, you need to feed that campaign with creatives. So how we are using ad groups, I think that was a super useful thing. What was added to the Google UAC the last couple of years, it was ad groups. Because definitely you can test more the creatives when you are separating them, for example, for messaging, for different angles, to using and try and test the new concepts, if they are giving a lot of like chance and possibility, if it's pushing there the budget or not. So I think it's a really useful one. When I'm talking about creatives, it's really important to fill out every like free slots, what is suggested there inside of the UAC campaign. So you need to fill out every like text, what is needed there, the static formats, videos, HTML files. And it's really important to have a different variations of the sizes of this static or videos or whatever, because if the algorithm or the machine doesn't find the correct format for that space, it will generate. Sometimes it generates a screenshot from your videos already, or some screenshots from your app store, which can be not in every case it fits together. So so keep in mind to fill out every slot to have it like prepared. What is I think really important here to play with the creatives, not just to putting them and leaving to the machine how it will work, but really deep dive, dig where they are shown, which networks they are used, playing around with a different length, because I think it's really important. Something else will work on YouTube and something else will work on GDN. So you need to play around with that. What we tried out as well, the amount of ad groups, what we have in a campaign. It really depends, of course, on the spend, what you have set it on the campaign. But my suggestion would be to use 5-6 ad groups. Depends on your spend, of course. But we tried with a lower amount and with a higher amount, and I can say that higher amount to have as far as I know, we have 90 or 80. Maybe we will ask Jan or somebody to say that how is the limitation of the ad groups, but definitely not to try out to put there, I don't know, 50 ad groups and play around with them, because it won't work properly, and the machine will not know where to sort, have to divide your budget. So the performance anyway will drop after the first couple of weeks. So that will be a really important part of it. And yeah, I would like to mention here our creative process of creating assets for UAC. It really takes time when you are setting up a UAC campaign to get results, because machine is learning. They need the time for it. So a lot of things we are testing on Facebook, which not necessarily need to work on Google UAC. So that's the thing what we were working on right now together with Google. And we are working on tweaking the whole process of creating these assets for the UAC, and to find which will work, which not, and have to just more resize the videos what we have on Facebook or in the other channels to fit it more to the Google UAC. So so yeah, that's about ad groups. And so far I have the key takeaways from here. I think when you are trying to set up your UAC campaign, try to think about the key elements, what I was mentioning before, that it's really needed to set your goal and to set the key metrics for you. And then to choose wisely country, budget, bids, the optimization goal, and use and try out different kind of and variations of creative assets that you have. The machine will do the job instead of you. So let's keep it clear in your hands, in your head, that not necessarily you need to worry about if after 2 weeks or after a month it's not really generating as good results as you were expecting, because anyway it's needed a time to learn what kind of people they should serve to you, who you are with familiar and who you are with okay with. So that's really important. And my suggestion, my personal suggestion is, after 7 days, start optimizing the campaign, even if there are some best practices behind, and not to do so, not to touch these campaigns. You can definitely see when it's not really spending or overspending or not generating that good ROAS, not just ROAS, but not generating valuable users and in the beginning. With the small tweaks, you can make big changes, really. And if you had a possibility, just check out the correlations between the key metrics, that it can help you define and to figure it out more sooner if something is really terrible in your campaign. And the other thing is, which I don't know if I was mentioning when I was showing you the graphs, but when you stabilize your spend, it's much easier, and it will do the machine his best for you. So I think that will be my key takeaways from it. I hope so you enjoyed, and thank you, guys. We cannot hear you, Marius.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much for a very, very interesting presentation. So I think we, in this case, we can really move and start to the questions. And Jan, maybe you will start.
Sure. Thank you, Marius, and Sylvie. Also, thank you for a very, very insightful presentation. Really appreciate it. And let's start from the top. And I think this is directed at Sylvie, but Julius, if you have anything to add, feel free to also jump in. So the question is around, you both work for the UA team, or you manage new user acquisition. How do you work with the creative team, and what does the process look like to make the creatives more effective in your UAC campaigns? Because as we know, the creatives are probably half of the success anyway. So do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, sure. Creatives are the most important part of the success, I can say, even if that times when we are really coming to that point that's no IDFA, and then you will have just a possibility with the creatives. I can share definitely that we were playing around with the motivators last year, and we are continuing with that this year as well. So we define the motivators which motivates really the players to play our games, and that's what we are working with together with our creative team. So that's we would like to unify the whole things around to have it on our app stores, on the UA side, so everywhere to communicate with the same language. And yeah, so that's how we are working on the creative side.
Thank you. And Julius, maybe in this case, actually, actually probably the question both to you. What would be your best advice for this starting campaign with Google Ads, like with this cold start in general? What is your advice for the topic?
So you mean like the first few campaigns on Google, what to do?
Yeah. So you are starting the activities and on Google, and there is this like a lot of differences, machine learning behind the Google, and this cold start is challenging for many companies and for many people. When you're starting those activities, what advices you would have both together actually?
Yeah, well, like as I stated in the presentation, we started on Insta Volume just because it was still profitable. So if you can be profitable with really cheap traffic, then it's good to go cheap traffic. The problem I see with TCPA and of course ROAS is that you need to have budget for it. So it's kind of hard for, I don't know, small or indie studio to do or start, because you really do. Like if someone says, oh, you can do something with 1K on TCPA, you can't. You need several thousands even for the learning phase. And yeah, so well, it's actually hard to, so different objectives are for different companies, right? So for example, like someone can work with Insta Volume if they are not monetized heavily like we do with IAPs, for example, if they are relying more on ads, then I see sense for going for low CPI campaigns. But if you want high value users, then yeah, prepare budgets, I guess.
I would like to add here that if it's like a smaller or indie company, or they don't have as big budgets to working with, I think it's super easy to try to just pick up some like smaller countries which can just be really similar to their main like markets, and then just have a lower budgets there and try out what they can just do with that. Because if it will generate you a good results anyway, you can ask for more budgets then. So if you can show that it can really perform and you can manage to work with that, then I think that can be a good option as well.
Thank you.
And guys, we have a question from Yuri, which just appeared. Which approach have you used in the past to estimate your predicted LTV during the early launch phase? And I think Julius spoke about this quite a lot. Sylvie also touched on that. It's hard, right? And you have to like maybe have some experience and also believe a little bit. But do you have any other comments or tips on how to estimate the LTV?
Well, we are not working with the LTV prediction or estimates. Like, we have more of a gut feeling, or like experience of, we know our products and we are pretty confident what they can do, but nothing sophisticated like, oh, this is day 7, so day 180 is gonna look like this. Nothing like that. Like, we wanted to do something like this, but it's really hard to do with our analytic department. But since there are a lot of changes because of the ATT and everything will be much different, we're not even doing this at the moment. So. But I think Pixel has something like that, no?
Yeah, we are making some estimations, but it really depends on our historic data, what we have with our like latest games. So, but after when we launch a game, we need to recalculate everything and re-predict the whole LTV curve. So I think you need a time for that.
Yeah, I think this is not even possible to do it for a new game, right? Because you have no data to rely on.
Yeah.
So it's like you have just some estimations, some projections, and some like experience from the previous projects, as I understand.
Yes, that's how we are. What is our approach so far?
And then actually, very interesting question around, in general, once you are running the campaigns. In this case, the question is for Sylvie, but I believe Julius, you will have a lot to tell about that as well. Like, how you are actually, approaching in general, like the ads revenue. So how we are actually trying to understand the total ROAS for the specific like campaigns. Like the ads revenue. So like if you have the ROAS, how actually you kind of approach this ads and predictions of LTV, and like even measuring this ROAS, which is in general harder than in case of in-app revenue.
Yeah. We have these hybrid models that we have like in-app actions and like in-app actions from the ad monetization. So we have ads and we have the in-apps. And we have the score, which is like our prediction and LTV prediction for that, and we have it in our. As I mentioned, we have a really good analytical team, and they prepared us like a pretty good dashboards with that. So it's really easy when we can just comparing that if that campaign is break even or not. And if it's generated and it will be break even after a year or not. So that's how all the prediction is works. We are looking at the year data, so are we predicting the year how it will look like. So
well, for us, like we are trying to, of course we have ads as well, but we are relying most on the IAP. But we are trying to implement the ROAS LTV and ROAS revenue. I mean ads LTV and ads revenue to the whole ROAS curve of the campaign. Like we have nothing sophisticated, but it works for us. We are not working with any third party.
Mm-hmm.
We know like how many ads was watched daily. We know like who is watching the ads, and actually we are just dividing the number of ads like per the number of people that watch the ads, and then we are distributing the estimate number to the campaign, you know. So I don't know if Jan watched 100 ads and Mariusz watched 1 ad, so most of the revenue that was made on the day was probably made by Jan, right? So that's how we're doing.
Thank you, Sylvia and Mariusz. Julius. I think we kind of answered the first question here on the list, but you can also comment on it. One last question, and I'd encourage everyone who is still watching, feel free to submit more questions. But like the last question for now is whether your approach is different when you are launching or testing emerging or smaller markets. Do you do anything differently from the tier 1 countries?
Definitely, yes. When we would like to just target smaller markets and smaller audiences, then we are putting or making a bigger clusters first of all, and to have it grouped together, then we are looking at the countries if there is something which is just outperforming from the others. So that's the approach.
Similar for us. So we are even actually like when we are running, for example, worldwide campaigns for VO or something, or even on Google, we're actually even excluding some emerging markets because we see like, okay, when we're optimizing it on daily basis, we see, for example, that some geos are really underperforming, right? Like the metrics are really crap. So what's the point even like running it? So we are slowly excluding the underperforming markets.
And maybe actually, to follow up on that question, how actually heavy you are going with the localization of your UA campaigns? Like, how like deep, how localized are actually those campaigns?
Yeah, is it for me or?
Yeah, go ahead, Julius.
Well, in the past we were really like localizing everything, and now actually when the trend is like UAC and AAA campaigns and all the black boxes, I think it's less and less important. And when we're grouping into the clusters more countries, then of course we're running mostly everything in English, unless you're running something specific, like I don't know, like Russia, Belarus, Ukraine or something, then you can do Russia, or DACH region, you can do German. But we don't see it that much of an issue like we thought it was in the past, because even like we had some great performance, and like it was one of the best campaigns in the past. Like accident happened, and it was actually the best performing campaign, and it was in France with German text. So then we thought like, okay, localization is not important because they don't understand, and they are playing and paying anyway. So
these accidental things are super super good performance wise all the time. And I can add here that we had a similar approach. We tested and we were heavily localized everything in the past. And then when it comes to UAC and you don't have as much possibilities there, then almost everything we had is in English. But on Facebook, we are testing different like DCOs when you can, or DLOs when you can put a lot of languages inside, and just for your cluster weights that it will perform anyway. But the one like place or a market where we are trying to use the localized versions are Germany and Austria and Switzerland, like DACH, because that really worth it. So even if we had a UAC campaign, maybe we are not setting up a language just for German, like, but we are using the ad groups with the German creatives, localized creatives. So that's how we were approaching in this case.
Thank you. Okay, I think we actually, we came to the end. Thank you very much for for the great presentations and sharing your knowledge with the people and the crowd. Really thank you for the whole session. And then, of course, to everyone, I'm just encouraging you to visit the GameCamp website and see the next webinars happening in the next weeks. And thank you again to Sylvie, to Julius, and to Jan. And I hope to see you again in the next weeks as well.
I hope so too. And thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.